far in the corner, it's unreal. 10. You trying to get rid of us.
That's where it always is.
5.
Within a foot.
4, 3, 2, 1. You're on.
Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2017 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are live from McGilvery Speedway, 30th and High School in the beautiful town of Speedway, Indiana. If you're coming to town for any reason, like, for instance, to come and see the lights at the Brickyard, we went last night. It is spectacular. If you haven't been there to see it, you need to go. It's really worthwhile. And when you're in town, you get thirsty, you get hungry, McGilvery's is the place to go. It's only a couple miles straight west of the Speedway. Come on in, see them. They got the good food, great service, and, of course, the adult beverages are ice cold. A couple things to mention quickly. The bench racing weekend has been canceled. Chuck Schumann and his wife Ann have got some family problems and a health problem, and it's forced them out of town for now, and they're going to try and resurrect the program for 2018. Next year's 18. 19, that's right. I'm sorry, it would be next year.
No,
okay.
Next year's 18.
I know, but it's canceled. The 18 is canceled. They'll be back for the 19. Let me change that. 19. Okay. As I said, if you haven't seen the lights at the Brickyard, you got to go. It is really spectacular. It's bigger than last year, and they say they got 2.5 million lights. I bet you they got 3.5 million. I mean, it's really something. Get out there. Next week, my scheduled guests are the CEO and president of the SVRA, Mr. Tony Perella, who is also the majority owner of the Trans Am Series, which will be running here when they come in June, and Dave Dusek, the founder of the Dusek Foundation. And he started a club which I joined when he first started at the IKDD, which means I know Dave Dusek, but he's cut it short so people didn't throw things at you. He will be here. And also Mr. Throckmorton and his betrothed Fluffy will be here. We're going to talk about the Grant King episode, so if you want to be here and you get to see it, they're going to show the little snippet up. We're working on getting it so you can put it on the big screen. So you want to get in and see that. It's really kind of neat. Also want to mention the worst doctor's appointment anybody ever has is a dentist's appointment. Well, I got a news for you. The Indy Dental Group is spectacular. Dr. Jack Miller and his wife, Dr. Liz Lewis, have a phenomenal practice. They have a number of offices around, but I highly recommend you call and get yourself an appointment if you need dental work, and you'll see what we're talking about. And give them a call. The number is 317-846-6125. And I want to say welcome to Brett, who is back. The Speedway Cable. He's finally returned from another sabbatical. I think he's been resting, pumping iron. Want to also mention that next week on December 8th and 9th, there will be at the Grant King Shops and Throckmorton Racing. They're having a catered, provided dinner by McGilvery's. It's $25 a head. It includes personal shop tours, horses, duvers, and beer. Also available will be a cash bar. It's RSVP only. So if you need to get in touch with them and tell them you want to come there, go to grantkingShops@gmail.com or call them at 317-820-3959. Tonight's show is presented, as always, by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Verizon IndyCar Series, and SVRA. My first guest is, fortunately, I'm going to embarrass him, a friend of mine. His climb to notoriety is really astounding. And what there's three guys involved in this, we'll talk about it, what they've accomplished and what they're doing is phenomenal. He is known around the trade winds as Chicago's own. Please welcome my friend, Mr. Scott Jasek.
Thank you, Don.
Now, when this whole thing started, when I first saw you at the airport, I think it was at the airport, when you were a manager at Budget Rent-A-Car.
I was cleaning cars. Yeah, I was cleaning cars at Budget Rent-A-Car. No, I actually was I came down from Chicago's own.
Yes.
1994. I was in a meeting at Budget World Headquarters. I was working for the CEO, and they were going to sell Budget as a franchise. They were going to sell it off. And I just said, if I made $1 profit, would you double my bonus? And in the meeting, he said, okay, I'll do that deal. So I had this intention. I was going to come to Indianapolis for 1 year, double my bonus, go back up to Chicago. I had no intention to, I thought, in fact, I've lived here like 94, 20, 18 years, I don't know, some number of years. I didn't even choose to learn the streets here. You can tell me an address in Chicago, I can tell you exactly where you're at, but I just know Washington and Meridian. So, long story short, I ended up here because of budget, and that's how I met Jeff Sinden and Joe Kennedy, my business partners.
Well, did they come rent cars from you? Is that how you met them?
Well, you know how racers are. They wanted a trade, right?
Of course.
And so I got a call from Jeff Sinden and said, hey, would like to do this trade out for some rental cars. And he explained their shop there on Gasoline Alley. I went over and met with them, and they had free beer. They had a deal with Monarch Beverage.
Oh.
So they had a keg of beer there. So after the Indy 500 that year where I helped him get cars, he said, hey, whenever you want, come by. We have free beer. I didn't know anybody, so I befriended Jeff Sinden and Joe Kennedy, my two business partners. Those were like my first two friends, and then you are my third friend. So I have three friends here in Indy.
Yeah, it went like this, and then.
But so really, in getting to know Jeff and Joe, hanging around, started going to the races and all, and then, as you know the story well, one night, just drinking beer out of the keg there, we started to talk about what became the two-seater, and then a business plan was built, presented to Tony George. We know that story, and so the two-seater was born, and the racing experience started.
And then the wing fell off.
And
then the renegotiation started to get it back. And that took
It's
quite
so
a while
funny
to get through that.
Yeah, well, no, so everyone remembers the wing coming down on, everyone that was around 17 years ago remembers the wing coming down with Roberto Guerrero. But that was actually those are our street legal two-seaters now. That was our proof of concept car. And then the wing came down. We then built new cars. Let me describe the wing coming down. When we built the cars, those were stretched by Dallara. We bought wings from a team. I'm not going to say which team.
Fine.
And the rear wing that we purchased turned out to be a cheater wing. Who would think, right? Who would think?
Oh.
And so we are often blamed for this wing coming down, but we never really said. This 17 years went by, but the wing was, there was a lot of pieces hollowed out. And so on the super speedways, we still use a short track wing setup to put a lot of downforce on the car. So that put an excess amount of downforce on that rear wing, which was a cheater wing, which then broke, and we were blamed for it.
Well, there was somebody that got caught with a cheater wing. I don't know if it's the same.
Might have been. Who knows?
We'll
just let bygones be bygones.
But so that started it all, and from that you've had how many thousands of rides have you given?
Geez. I mean, it's over. I'm just throwing a number, over 50,000 or so. I think I made some notes to remind. So we do about 4,000 two-seat rides a year, and we do about 250 drives a year. And we do, because I made these notes down, I'll make myself feel good, 4,000 pace car rides and around 7,000 event car rides. And then the street legal two-seater, that does so many events. I bet you 10 to 15,000 people riding those, because they're gone all the time. Those from just up every week they're somewhere. So in fact, they're going to be leading the two Big Ten teams, the Big Ten championship. A two-seater will lead the Iowa team. I mean I was just in Iowa. The Ohio team in, and the Wisconsin Badgers team in.
Did you hear that? Going to ride and somebody's going to be in a two-seater. It's not going to be you, is it?
Okay. What team?
The Badgers.
Oh, yeah, okay. They're going to fly in, and then Iowa's coming in on the bus. So I think we're going to pick them up at the airport, Wisconsin. So I think that's the plan.
You guys, how much beer had you had, or who had the initial idea for the two-seater?
And I'm not saying it because I'm sitting here and pat myself on the back. It was Jeff and Joe I was looking at the race car, and I said, hey, let me just drive I don't want to be a race car driver, but just let me drive the Indy car. And they're like, there's just no way. They said, oh, you'll blow the engine's 700,000. Just crazy numbers were getting thrown out. So I just jokingly drew it. I think I have it at home. I drew the two-seater. I said, well, what if we stretched it and then put a back seat, and I'll sit in the back seat and let the professional drive. And I initially thought it was funny when I drew it out, and then I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, that could work. And it was crazy that it really ended up evolving to what we thought it would, but it took years to things sound, when you're 17 years into something, the first few years where it was really difficult, you kind of forget that, and you suddenly go, oh, yeah, we went through the hard times, and now it's good.
When I traveled to most of the races, one of the first things I would do is get back to the motel and watch the sports news. And the number of guys that didn't really care about racing, but they took the ride.
Yeah.
And the publicity and the enthusiasm had to be. I mean, IndyCar's got to say thank you.
Sure. Well, yeah. And when you think about all the sports in America, all the different sports, right? When can you really participate in the sport the way that two-seater allows you to participate in the sport, right? You can't. I used to say you can't play basketball on Michael Jordan's back, or you can go play golf with someone like Tiger Woods or whatever, but to get right behind Mario Andretti and start the Indy 500, I mean, it's just kind of it's like maybe like a kickoff of the Super Bowl. Maybe you're on the side. I don't know, but it's really unique that way.
And the unfortunate part is, well, not unfortunate actually, you gave a ride to the now President of the United States.
Yeah,
He came here and took a ride.
No, well, and we took the car to New York. We gave,
all right.
yeah. We took it to Trump Plaza.
And he took a ride.
Took a ride, yeah.
And he got out of the car, and he was surrounded by his staff. And they fluffed him, they fluffed him. So when the cameras come, he looked like nothing had happened. He had the helmet on. When he got out, they combed his hair.
Well, the way we did everything. Well, he has a lady, and maybe I told the story before, but there's a lady that's with Donald Trump, or was, I don't know if she still is, and she had a belt with 2 gold hairsprays and a big gold mirror that had a T on it. So when we gave him the ride, his hair got messed up.
Oh.
And then I sat on the side pod, Mario, of course, was in front, and then Donald Trump kept rubbing Mario's hair, going, look at his hair, and then he's rubbing my head, and then he's telling me to look at his head, and he's saying, look, my hair's real. And I'm like, I know it is. And he goes, people don't think my hair is real. I'm like, well, he kept telling me to look at his scalp, and I'm like, it was obvious it's real. And then he's like, where's my girl? And he's a very commanding guy, as you could tell, right? He's
sure.
And so the girl comes over, and he holds his big gold T mirror, and then she sprays his hair with the gold hairspray bottles, and gets all right. Then Mario gives him another ride, and if you see it on YouTube, and if you go to Mario Andretti and Donald Trump, you'll see it. But then as Mario pulls up in front of the museum, Donald Trump's going, holy, and his hair's kind of. But the day before, I gave him a ride because we weren't sure if he was going to fit. So he came down, I introduced myself, he got in the back of the two-seater, and I gave him a quick ride around. But I didn't spend much time with him. The next morning is when Mario and I got to sit with him. Again, I might have told this story, but if you've heard this before, we're sitting there, and Donald Trump sends 4 people out onto the street, two guys on each side with a rope. And they hold the rope, and they shout, Donald Trump's coming, Donald Trump's coming. And slowly a crowd builds, and then another guy comes in and says, okay, Donald, there's a crowd. And then that's when Mario called him a circus clown. He's like, you are a circus clown. And Donald Trump, so Donald doesn't have his jacket on or anything, and he's like, oh, no, I just know how to promote. I just want to build a crowd. I want a lot of people there when I go out. And then he put his suit jacket on, and he straightened his tie out, and then he puts his chest up real big, and he does that walk, like crazy walk. And he walked out to the car, but he was actually very entertaining. And I should mention it, racing related, knew a lot about the Indy 500, obviously was in tune with TV ratings, crowd sizes. He talked about how he was trying to put a race together on Governor's Island, I believe, with Tony George. So he was very, very, he really understood a lot about IndyCar, NASCAR. He talked a lot of racing with Mario and us. So there's my Donald Trump story. And then, of course, then we got to know Mike Pence because Mike did his inauguration at our building and all that stuff. So who would have thought?
Yeah. I mean,
Don's going to be the next president.
And there he is. Then you guys have, since then, it's like somebody just sprinkled water on you. You've grown.
Well, maybe in life that's what we do, right? I mean, you seek out. Or for me personally, I was successful in my budget career, and I've always just thought of like growing business, employing people. I do it more personally. I just do it. I enjoy growing things, and I'm glad we employ really nice and good people, as we attempt to do.
Oh, you do.
And that's the goal. And so we did the racing experience. Then we started the experiential marketing company, where we do, I might notes here, Don, to 400 to 500 show car events a year. We do about 100 events with our simulators, 10 pit stop competitions. The street legals go out about 230 times a year. We built of course, we build mobile units. We built the state of Indiana one. We just finished one that was in Times Square for the U.S. Olympics. One of our craziest things we've ever built. It was a box truck with a slide out, a stage, and then a giant screen pops out the top of it. And that one almost killed our company because when we were trying to get it done, the time frame, the window got smaller and smaller, and we were all hands on deck for about 2 weeks there, working about 14 hours a day getting that done. But that was our experiential marketing company. Then we bought the Indy Engine Group, which is formerly the Menards Engine Group. We build and rebuild around 25 engines a year. And when John was going to sell it, he called us and said, "You guys are one of my bigger customers. I'm selling this. Do you want to buy it?" And so we thought, well, let's do that. So that was the first acquisition we ever made. Then we became the U.S. distributor for Dallara. And then we partnered with Dallara and built the building, which then created Main Street Events that we do 200 events a year.
And there's one Thursday night.
There's a big one this weekend. When I say a big one, sometimes the events are just in the front of the building. We call the big events is where they go all the way into our back bays, and like even one day of all bands, Kool and the Gang was playing. And they're doing the sound check in the back and all. But
really,
so we do 200 events with the Main Street Event Company, but a lot of them interact with each other. So our Main Street Event Company, people rent show cars or the street legal, which then led us to the graphics company. So we thought, internally we do hundreds of thousands of dollars in graphics. So when Panther Racing was selling, we bought Panther Graphics, which then grew into the Menard opportunity, and we wrap probably 200 to 300 Menard trailers a year and buses and cars, and which then caused us to build the loft.
And you bought the biggest printer?
For Hewlett Packard, it's called the wide format latex printer. Latex, what they promote about latex is that it's water-based. It's not toxic. You could put it in hospitals and things like that.
Put it interior. It doesn't bother anybody.
Correct. Which we now have a new website, Yukuda.com, that you can make custom wallpaper. But that's something the graphics company's working on.
Jeez. Then something that you and I have talked about over the last 4 or 5 years that you've been trying, you had your eye on, and that's the Richard Petty experience.
So
And you tried, and you said, no, it just hadn't worked. But all of a sudden, here comes an announcement. Guess what? It did.
So Richard Petty sold his race team, his naming rights, his racing experience, and his mobile marketing company to a private equity firm. And for 10 years, how private equity works, they buy up, they have a fund. Millionaires or billionaires like you, Don, invest in Don's a big investor, private equity guy.
Howdy's in one of them. Howdy's.
They put money in a fund, and then they go out and purchase companies. For this example, they might have bought 10 companies. One of them was Richard Petty. And over time, that fund will time out, and they have to liquidate all those companies. Some are winners, some are losers, but the net effect should be that you made money with your investment. So in the midst of all this, shortly after they bought it, they sold off the race team. I think that went to Fenway or whatever, and eventually Richard got the race team back. Then Richard wanted his naming rights back. At the same time, we were attempting in bid on buying the Richard Petty driving experience because we thought that would work hand in hand with us. Someone else bid higher than we did, and they bought that. The EEG company, Experiential Events Group, was another entity owned by this, and we had heard that NASCAR was going to buy it. Well, then I received a phone call from, which is now our business partner, David Zucker, who was the head of programming for ESPN, great guy, investment guy out of Chicago. The reason he contacted, we had known him, but he contacted us because the Petty lawyer, Bill Scott, knew us and said, hey, you should contact these guys. They might be good partners to you. So we talked to David, we negotiated the deal, and we bought what's now Experiential Events Group. It's, in terms of employees, equipment, revenue, it's a little bit larger than all our companies put together. So we've now like doubled in size. So between all the companies, we have 120 full-time employees, probably 160 or 70 total employees, some part-time. There's like 55 I think there's 55 race cars when you count the two-seaters, the NASCARs, and all that came with the purchase. There's like 25 tractors, over, I think, around 35 or 40 transports. So it's quite an operation now. It's kind of starting to become real.
Are you going to put new graphics on the vehicles?
Well,
on
I'm glad you mentioned
trailers?
graphics, because our initial thought was, when we were looking at purchasing the EEG company, is they also do a lot of internal graphics, but they're a tier 1 supplier to Chrysler, to Boeing, so there's a lot of graphic connections there.
Really?
Yes. So this will lead to other business, which has led to some other graphics opportunities for us. But there's I'm failing to mention, there's another business partner, Mark Daly. Mark's an Indiana guy, a racer, great guy. Mark is the president of EEG. David is our business partner there. And then, of course, on the other side, we have our business partner is John Paulo Dallara with the Dallara building. So besides Jeff and Joe, we have some really good business partners in what we're doing. So, and one important guy that's been behind the scenes, and we call him our advisor board, but it's just one guy, has always been John Menard, and he's a very wise man, and he can point you in the right direction.
Did he get you 11% discount on the purchase, by the way?
Yeah. So he's always willing to invest with you, but he wants all of you. So he's better as an advisor. Wonderful man, though.
When's he going to come back to Indy cars?
He is with Penske, right?
Yeah, but come on.
I don't think he wants to. I think he enjoys being a sponsor
And come and watch.
And if you notice, Roger lets him sit, and he's capable of making calls on the box and all, but I don't think he does. But
well, what he doesn't realize, the earphones are on, but the microphones are on. Yeah, he's quite a guy. He's been very successful from building a couple of pole barns to this.
Unbelievable, yeah. I asked him that question. I said, John, what was your first time you had to pay employees? And he mentioned 3 guys' names. And I go, how many employees do you have now? And he said 60,000. So he went from 3 to 60,000. So.
Well, you've gone from 3 or 4 guys to 100.
I know.
At the end of the week, you got to be tired of signing checks.
Well, as you would know, any type of business, as they grow, and then sometimes you have to pinch yourself and say, we need how much money by when, so the cash flow of a company, and especially the bigger you get, you really have to pay close attention to, obviously, cash flow.
Well, I am more familiar with the people that kind of overseeing or running Indy racing experience, and they are phenomenal. I mean, just terrific people, and everybody that I've met that works for you and with you are spectacular. And the guy that really surprised me was Joe Kennedy. I didn't realize he's a computer. He can do a lot.
Joe's he's unbelievable.
He can do anything.
Yeah, and his son Chris is the same way. If I think of our in the different segments we have Zane, our painter, paints cars, paints stuff for Dallara, does unbelievable job painting. He's been painting for like 1,000 years or something.
I think I know him.
Everybody knows Zane.
Yeah.
And
he used
then
to work for Simon.
Yeah, correct. And then Bill, our engine builder, has been building engines, I think he said, since he was like 11 or 12 years old. So, I mean, everyone has their specialty and does an unbelievably good job with it. And again, with our graphics company, our mechanics, our event, in fact, even our event company, we have Christine, who just came to us from Lucas Drag Racing and ran the Lucas the mansion up there, and she works with us now. So, I mean, we look, you do your best at trying to find good employees. We're not always successful, but you try.
Yeah, but it was just announced by Schumacher that they hired Zippy Neff away from John Force. So Force has now hired, I forget, one of the crew chiefs of Schumacher's team. Force hired him over to his team, so they just traded people. That should be interesting, because if there's ever 2 bigger egos in the world, it's Schumacher and Force has not only got a big ego, he talks a lot.
Definitely.
So that should be interesting next year how that works out. You know, do you guys ever sit down to yourself and say, holy smokes, look what it is. Look what it's turned into.
No, I'm because we're always, you're always looking. You always feel like you're unemployed, right? When you own your own business, you're always like looking for the next thing. Like and the goal has always been to diversify, and I think we've done a good job now. Now, especially we have a great base with IndyCar and Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The EEG company with the petty connections and all does a great job at doing show cars and mobile marketing experience for NASCAR. They also have a whole film and commercial division with camera cars and all. So there's a whole kind of Hollywood part of this. And then there's specialty transportation. And then we have a location in Michigan, in the Detroit area, that services all the auto manufacturers. So we kind of have the auto manufacturers, NASCAR, and IndyCar kind of covered now.
The only thing you're missing is NHRA. What's happened with you?
Well, I think we do a Chrysler display. I'm still getting used to saying we because we've only owned it for a month. But we have a display for Chrysler that goes to all at the NHRA events. And we'll have a display at the PRA show with Chrysler, with Mopar, I think.
Mopar?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you drop one of the cars on New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve, yeah. And they're changing the location. It's not going to be at the Pacers. It's going to be somewhere in the middle of downtown. It's a different setup. In fact, we're going to practice December 6th. We're practicing the drop of the car. Every year we do a practice.
I've noticed one year I think you had a couple of ropes to hold it because it was windier than heck.
Right. So, yeah, we had we use one specific car, and it's all kind of designed to tether, and yeah, so we do drop the car on New Year's Eve.
It's amazing to me. I got to meet you when you first came with Jeff and Joe at Sinden Racing and started expanding it. It's very impressive, not only what you've done, but the way you've gone about doing it. I think, as I said, the people that I know that work with you and for you are I don't know of any that are. I know of one where you had a little problem, but that's just one teeny one that you solved rather quickly. But for the most part, I mean, you've got some, and when I hear some of the drivers for the two-seater, I go, geez Louise.
Yeah.
You don't hire some schmutz that's out on a street corner with a sign, I need work. You get
Well,
professional drivers.
I told you how Mario Andretti came to. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
So we're in Sonoma, and we had the two-seater out. I think it was back in the Davey Hamilton. Somebody else was driving. Mario was doing something else there, and he came walking over, and then he looked at the car, and he goes, I had no idea these were real engines. He was really impressed, and he said to me, if you're ever looking for a good shoe, give me a call. And then he gave me his business card. But I had this vision that he's going to cost a fortune. So I never called him. And then I think it was Peak Antifreeze, did a deal where they asked me, can Mario drive it? And I'm like, sure, if you're paying for him, great. And so he came out and he drove it then. And then that's when he started. It was like he was calling me all the time to drive. And I was a bit embarrassed because didn't want to ask him, like, well, how much is this going to cost? And I don't think he would mind me saying this. In the very beginning, he just came out and drove it. He just wanted to drive. And then as everything evolved with Honda, of course, he's paid by Honda and he's paid well. But he was it also, by saying that about him just coming out and driving, it's his passion. This is what he does, right? And he said to me many times, this is the last race car he'll ever drive. And he approaches a two-seater like a race car. I mean, his two-seater always has to be the fastest. We even tell the young guys, don't run up behind him because he just goes nuts. Like he's racing all the time. He can't. There's no turning him down. So, in fact, it was in Mid-Ohio, and he always feels he doesn't give someone a good ride. Like, and people get out and they're shooken out, right? Like on a road course, we typically do 1, maybe 2 laps. And he gave at Mid-Ohio, he was capable of doing 3 laps because of the size of Mid-Ohio. So he did 3 laps and almost killed this baseball player. That guy, he laid in our trailer for like a half hour, and he was all shook up. And Mario's like, I didn't think I gave him a good ride. I'm like, you almost killed him. Like, you gave him a good ride. You gave him a good ride.
That's the thing that's been impressive about that aspect is people, and they come out and they go, holy smoke, and these people go faster and oh my God, wow. I mean, it gives them a sense of what these drivers do and why they love it.
Oh yeah, it's been. we've done the Indy racing experience. We've done a lot of our companies. The principle behind it is do it with first class equipment. Our HP first class HP printer, our facility, build it first class. Try to do everything first class, and then your customers will come. It's expensive in the beginning. Like when you take the capitalized equipment of the two-seaters, the engines, and everything behind it, there's about $7 million worth of stuff, right? The chassis were $475,000 a piece. So it's taken us a while. We had to borrow money and all to get it going. But because we've done it in such a fashion, companies like Honda, Aero, Firestone, that they come to you, right? And then you're able to make a business out of it. But we didn't cut any corners ever. I don't know if we did, other than that darn wing. I didn't know about that, but we try never ever to cut a corner on anything.
Where do you get the cars?
The two-seaters?
Yeah. You buy old cars, I assume, and stretch them.
No. The two-seaters are purpose-built by Dallara. There's six purpose-built Dallara. That's why they're so expensive. They're more expensive than an Indy car. First, there's more carbon fiber, but the molds are different. So Dallara can only write the mold off of, there's 4 that are the same, and there's 4 that were kind of a similar model, and then the 2, what we call the newer ones, are similar. And we're going to make some adjustments to the bodywork. None of them look exactly alike, and none of them look, people don't always know that it's the newer, older style. But here's a question, Scott. Are you going to get new body kits to match the new configuration for 2018? The answer is I think so. And what's happening is Dallara needs to get all the body work for the first part of the season and through May. So we also build a lot of show cars, and it's difficult for us to get body work from Dallara right now until, if it would happen, it would be the next year. So it won't be this year. But if you look at now it's funny, the older two-seaters are starting to look more like the newer car than the newer two-seater looks like. It gets confusing, but.
Now, with all the things that Dallara is in, and I'd say that on any given weekend during a racing season, which could be going on everywhere, somewhere, they have like 200 vehicles running.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah.
All the time.
And what they're doing, they build the Bugatti. They design, engineer, and do a lot of the body work for the Bugatti. Mr. Dallara, a week ago, introduced his car.
Right, that's what I was leading
so
up to.
He's got his own production car, he's been working on that. The internal name of that car was the Me Too, meaning he too wanted to build a car, and so he called it the Me Too. But I think it's called a Strada or Strala or something like that. It's an Italian, means Don K in Italian. Yeah. It's the Don K car.
But when I read about it, he's only going to build 500.
Yes.
But
Originally,
499 are sold. One's for you guys.
I thought I heard a number of 70 or 80 are sold already, or were bought without even seeing the car. But
no doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah, it's an impressive car, impressive company, impressive man. He's an impressive.
It's amazing what they have done and what they're in. You think, well, they build Indy cars. That's only a small part of what Dallara company does. Holy
does so much, yeah.
And they're into automobile industry. I think they're doing something for somebody here, I think.
They may be doing stuff here. There's so many things that go on there now that are secret, whether it's with a car manufacturer or whether it's with whatever. There's just things that go on there that are really quite interesting, but
you're on the other half of the building.
I have no idea what's going on. I just know it's secret stuff. It says on the box, secret.
What about the $5 million simulator?
Looks like it's busy? Always, I know that it's busy because whenever I try to take someone to tour it, it's busy. So in the beginning, I used to be able to take people back there. Rarely can I get in it. So
well, that's good.
Yeah.
So what's next for you guys? Are you going airplanes?
No, digest the Experiential Events Group, and then take that and expand on that. Whether it's through through commercials and video stuff. We met with some people from ESPN, and so there'll be probably things we'll do commercial and film wise. We're always looking for opportunities with that company to do thrill rides. We call them thrill rides or ride and drives with manufacturers. And then does a unique thing like specialty transportation for Boeing, moves simulators around to military bases and things like that.
And you told me when we were talking earlier that you will still be at all the IndyCar events out there putting helmets on the people taking a two-seater ride. You got 17 other things going on that Saturday and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
No, that's our baby. That's like what it started. And then you meet so many people doing it. Plus, it's so much fun to watch people experience it. I don't want to give that up ever.
And I've heard about one. You got a button in there. If somebody gets panicked, you push the button.
In the button doesn't even exist anymore. Right?
But nobody. I think somebody.
Yeah,
I remember one person did.
Yeah, I can't. This
and once
guy
it got
from
explained,
the
they went out and they said, "Oh, it was great."
Yeah. Now the button was. I mean, it seemed to make a lot of sense in the beginning, but then after doing the experience, it's people don't freak out.
I asked somebody about.
No, wait a minute. I just thought of something. You have not ridden, right?
No, I'm more interested in others getting a ride. Because what I was told...
I won't come back on your show until you take a ride. Or you could drive. I'll leave. You could drive or ride.
One of the guys here that took a ride said that you don't have the button. You got a piece of rope around the driver's neck if you want to stop. No, that's not true.
We're not going to get Don to ride, are we?
I might, but I think... I'm hooked on a sport. You don't have to convince me of it.
No, but you should experience it, and then you'll think so different of it in a positive way.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But then I might want to keep doing this longer, and I'm getting some people saying, "Why don't you stop?"
Come on, you're a baby.
Getting old, crying out loud. Well, all I can say is, from the first time I met you and what you guys were in the process of putting together, I said to myself, "Really?" But the three of you are a perfect match.
Yeah.
Joe's got all kinds of knowledge in the racing industry. You've got the promotion and the salesmanship. Jeff just shakes hands and smiles nice at people. And is he still part of the safety team?
He is, yeah. And that we build a lot of the safety trucks and stuff. And it's great that Jeff's involved in it because then he knows where to put, how to weld something, put it wherever, because he's on the team. So yes, he still works on the safety team.
Does he still have Spot On or whatever?
He does that. Yeah, he does. Still makes his own cable. He does that at home, but yeah, he got Spot On
at home.
Yeah, he's got a unique home.
What? You don't have a room in this palace?
No. He does that at home. That's his.
He got it home. So that's his story. I've got to go home. I got welding to do, and you don't see him for 2 days.
Might be, but that's okay. It all works out.
Well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're always on the go, and your people have always been cooperative. If I've had a problem and wanted some assistance, I've never been told, get the heck out of here.
No, that would never be the case.
It's a great organization. The three of you should be very proud of what you've done.
Well, thank you.
The direction you've gone and the friends and people you've made. And the IndyCar should be thrilled to death because you got a lot of people in the seats because of what you've done and what Sportscast. I got a friend of mine who got a ride, Walt Makaborski. Gave him a ride in Texas. He's now in Austin. He comes anytime he can get near you guys. He's there.
And we have a lot of that. That's great. That's the whole point. That was the point of it. Yeah.
I worked with his dad when he worked for Simon. His dad and I are very good friends. And he said, "Geez, I never thought Walt would get in a car." I said, "Get in a car? Hell yeah, I'd pry him to get him out."
Perfect. That's what we want to hear. That's good.
Loved it. Well, I thank you for your time. I know you got to get going because your kid said, "Oh yeah, we saw him this weekend. We probably won't see him again, but you're going to sneak home."
No, thank you.
Him.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
No
Always
problem.
Enjoy it.
Thank you, Don.
Scott Jasek. Yeah, that's right. So I got to talk into the thing. I forgot about that. We got a note up here on how to be heard. Put it in front of you. So we try to keep everybody going. Thanks for your time.
All right, man.
And I'll be in touch. I got something else I want to run by you. Okay. Well, I'll try and catch you. Your phone is dead, so I won't call you tonight. All right. My next guest is going to be coming up here now. He's consulting with his assistant. But this portion of the program is being brought to you by the Indy Racing Experience. You can always get a ride in a two-seater. Well, maybe not always. But you go to IndyRacingExperience.com. and find a date that works for you. They run all summer at the Speedway, and they're around us wherever IndyCar is running. They're there. And at the Speedway, if you want to book a ride, in the promotion bar, you put SJ1 and you get a 50% discount. So take a ride in the Indy Racing Experience 2-seater and you'll see why these people love driving these cars. Stitches 2 on Gasoline Alley is the place that you need to go if you need any embroidery for a hat, shirt, jacket, shoe, it doesn't matter. They can do it. Fran loves to talk and talk about it. Tell her what you got and how you can get it there, and she'll take care of it. Her number is 317-271-3444. And next week, the president and CEO of SVRA will be here, and they have a magazine out that is absolutely spectacular. It's called Vintage Racing Quarterly. You should get a copy. It's a first-class magazine. It's not printed on some stuff that you can use in the outhouse. It's a class magazine. You can go to svra.com and you can subscribe to it. And they also have a Trans Am publication out now if you're into that, and people are getting back because it's back running again. You can check it out there. But go to svra.com, get the Vintage Racing Quarterly, and don't forget they will be here in June. And the owner and CEO, president of the organization is going to be here next week, and we'll talk about what they're doing. Sam Pierce Chevrolet in Daleville. You got to come to the country. You see why the best prices in the country are, in fact, at Sam Pierce Chevrolet. Just take I-69 north, exit 34, exit east 1 mile, and you won't miss him. He's on the right. There's about 400,000 cars out there. And when you buy a car from Sam, he doesn't stand behind you. He stands alongside you. Is it time to renew your insurance for your home, your car, or commercial property? Do what I did. Talk to Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. He's located at 5004 West 16th Street in the beautiful town of Speedway, Indiana. You give him a call, talk to him. You might be surprised. You get the insurance that you get from him will be better coverage for less money. His number is 317-248-0070. Got a Christmas party coming up. You need to organize it, bring the people in from out of town. And you're wondering, how in the world do I do that? Simple. Call Tony Meyer. She can help you. She's been doing it for 25 years. She knows how to make it happen. Her number is 317-515-7929. Talk to her. My next guest is a gentleman that has been here before, and I had to bribe him to get him to come back. He said it wasn't all that fun to begin with. He is a director of development and partnership for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Foundation and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. He is, I believe, a graduate of the Indiana University in Bloomington. Are you not?
Correct, I am.
Wow, how about that? And as everybody
That's
probably...
what my mother thinks, too. How about that I graduated?
Yeah. And as I spoke about all summer long, in spring when they had the Penske exhibit, and all summer when they had the A.J. Foyt exhibit, people went out and they said, boy, you were right. That's a spectacular one. They've got a new one now. And there's other things going on, so we're going to find out. I want to, again, Director of Development Partnerships for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Foundation. Please welcome Mr. Dave Wilson.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot.
What does a Director of Development, what are you developing?
Wow, that's where we're starting?
Well, I don't know.
Well, one, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for always representing us well with the shirts and the representation. I tell you, I was listening to all the ads, and you are a commercial property upon yourself. And you mentioned the Penske exhibit. You mentioned the Foyt exhibit. One of the things that most people traditionally haven't been aware of is that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum is actually completely separate from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Corporation. And we're actually a 501c3 foundation, and it's only been in the last couple of years that we've really started to look at what our programming is. We've always had an amazing collection of cars, which has been largely a private collection, Mr. Holman's private collection that's been open to the public. But in terms of programming and investing in some of the things like having the Penske exhibit look like it did. We went out and got sponsors, much like race teams do, so that we can ultimately invest in the exhibit and be most competitive for the entertainment dollar, right, or the education dollar. And so in that case, Pennzoil sponsored the Penske exhibit. In the case of Foyt, we had the ABC Supply was a presenting sponsor, so I worked with those folks to be able to get them to invest in the exhibits, which then allows us to buy the plane tickets down to Houston to stay with AJ and go through all the stuff and then pay to ship it, because all that stuff's not free. But that's the cool stuff to have, right? And when we have that, then more people come, pay $10 to come see it, and then we invest more into it. So largely I'm trying to find opportunities to invest in programming that the exhibit teams and all the key folks at the museum say, this is what we want to put on the floor, this is the experience we want our guests to have, and how do we make that happen?
I've been told.
Are you glad you asked?
Yeah. I've been told that, truth be told, that the car collection for the Speedway is a lot bigger than people realize. That there's more cars. You think it's in the building and downstairs. There's a boatload of cars. Do you get to rotate them from the, where they're stored? Do they bring them in and switch cars around when you do have the?
Well, I think you make a great point. And is anybody familiar with the? Is it the Tucker Special from 1939? That was the first rear engine. We've got a lot of unique cars that we have, and rather than just switch one out or two out, part of it is how do we tell the story? So right now that car has been brought up and the back bodywork taken out so that you can see the Gulf Miller engine, as it's placed and all the components of it, and it's now part of a new exhibit that opened up on Monday called The Incredible Engines of the Indy 500. So now instead of just having it be parked there by itself in one spot, it's part of an overall narrative and part of a story that says this car is significant for these reasons, and it puts it in context. So they do rotate. At the end of the day, if you've been coming to the museum long enough, you've seen most of everything. You just haven't seen it, in the darkness of the basement or the off-site storage, which is fantastic for sure, but we do rotate.
Whose idea was it to bring in, because I don't remember having big exhibits like you guys have been doing. Who put that? Whose idea was that? And who put that together?
Well, I think
it's probably
we've been
Marty,
fortunate
she won't admit it.
We've been fortunate to have a couple of very conspicuous anniversaries, like a Roger Penske 50th anniversary, exhibit that came up kind of right on the heels of the Centennial era, and one of the easy ones to do during that Centennial era was to have all the winning cars, that still existed, to celebrate the 100th anniversary. So that kind of the feedback from that, of having that historic collection together, was tremendous. And then from then, you've got a natural entry, particularly when you go to Penske. You've got 16 winning cars plus all his other racing successes in other series, that you really have a diverse grouping of cars, right? And that's one of the things, like last year's Indiana Automotive passenger car exhibit, that speaks to a certain classic car element. The engines exhibit speaks to a certain interest level that maybe doesn't care as much about the personalities of the drivers, but loves the machinery and the motors, and it appeals to a different group. And Penske was a good way to start, because he was not just Indianapolis 500, but he was just brilliant in so many forms, particularly with Mark Donohue, that it engaged other people. And the same thing with Foyt, where you have his Indianapolis 500 history, but his Sprint, Midget, Porsche, the Oldsmobile Aerotech, the guy could drive anything with wheels. We should have had his tractor. If I'd gotten one more sponsor, we would have brought his tractor up from Texas, but that's a little more costly. But the guy could win in anything, right? And so even if you weren't necessarily an Indy 500 fan, the guy won Daytona. Won Daytona 24, Le Mans. So we can start to appeal to more people, because ultimately, if we're going to succeed, we actually have to get people through the door. I mean, The zoo and the symphony and the children's museum and the art museum, they're doing things not because, let's be honest, people are going to come to us on their way down from Chicago driving to Atlanta for Father's Day weekend. They're going to stop at the track and they're going to find us at the museum. We're not necessarily strategizing to engage those folks. So our bigger challenge for our success and being able to grow is how do we attract and get you all and the people that live in a 2-hour radius of this, give them a reason to come back and come more often. And we have to be more aggressive in telling the great stories that the true fans know and tell them more deeply or more engagingly, and then also tell them in a way that we can make new fans with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the people that I talked to that went to the Penske exhibit and the Foyt were surprised because they didn't realize that these guys did more. They didn't realize what AJ had done. The only thing that I know of he didn't win is an airplane race and a drag race. And I bet if he'd have been in a drag race, he'd have won that eventually.
Absolutely.
Well.
Absolutely.
He could win in anything.
Well, and that's where, not to spill beans because it hasn't fully developed yet because we haven't always been thinking this far ahead, but one of the things that we'd like to do next winter is create a, gosh, this is public. I'm holding a microphone, so don't hold me to this, any of you, but kind of a roots to racing theme that, we've got people. We're always going to have the significant people in May and the big exhibits in the summer. That's what the Indy 500 and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is, the Penskes, the Foyts, Gurneys. But in the winter, when we don't have as many out-of-town travelers come through, how do we make it relevant to you guys? So Indiana Automotive passenger cars. This, right now, having the incredible engines. But next year, in the winter, making a roots to racing. You know how many great races go on during the summer every Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night around this state? There's a community of folks that are really passionate, and we're not connecting with that. You see that a little bit with the Foyt cars, right? Tony Stewart, Brian Clausen, those guys could drive anything. How do we tell the story of that type of racing in kind of a and be relevant to that group. So there's not going to be 100 Indy 500 cars necessarily on display, but there's a better story in racing that we can do for 4 or 5 months, and engage some folks, bring some new people to the track, and hopefully to raise a level of interest in all forms of racing.
Can you join? Can you become a member of the museum? Is there?
I'm so glad you asked.
Oh.
Well. And as you've been such a great advocate for it, absolutely, and that's one of the things that the programming is trying to do. We had Donald Davidson speak at a group. We now have a new event space, so we're starting to do events like typically museums do, where the benefit is it's if you want to come here, Donald, it's $20 if you're not a member, $10 if you are. It's we got to keep having programs. Do we do a Women in the Indy 500 panel at some point? We had Dennis Horvath talking about the Indiana history in the automotive success that it had. So how do we continue to do programming that gives value to that membership? But that membership is so critical for us because we're investing in Marty and her team being able to have a new bus. Right? So those buses are owned by the track. Well, now we've got a smaller one that's more similar to what the airport is, a lot more comfortable, it doesn't involve a chauffeur's license of anybody can drive it. So now we can be more accessible to people for tours and not have to run these great big huge buses, which aren't always as reliable as we'd like. But that came from the support of people who rode those buses and helped donate. And now we're giving a better experience. So part of it is we want to show that the investment, that we're good stewards, that we're investing in programming and investing in the experience for the fans and to make new fans.
You tore the office space out that's on the north end, and now you can display cars there. But I understand the staff, Betsy and everybody is looking at expanding the museum.
That is the goal. We've had a strategic plan that significantly enlarges the museum, and that is the plan. The timing is a little don't know. Largely, we don't have a 20-year track history like the Children's Museum of building up a database that we can just push a button, hit send, and tell 40,000 families that we want to grow. And so part of that is one of the reasons the membership program is important. We need to start showing that we are investing in and being good stewards with the resources, and that we can program the space that we have now. Because size in terms of a building doesn't really matter. If you can't put on a good show in 20,000 square feet, having 100,000 square feet to program, you got to show you can do it. And I think that's where, as you mentioned, kind of the past couple exhibits and the thoughts of our programming, if you come see the Incredible Engines exhibit, they're on stands now, and we've got a parts petting zoo. So, because kids, there's nothing in there you can touch. So now there's an Offenhauser parts right there, that parts petting zoo. There's an animated graphic, cartoon-like, that shows how an engine works. There's a touchscreen touchpad that you can click on and actually hear what the Novi sounded like. Recording of the turbine, I think with Sid Collins, as it's warming up before, and hearing what the start of the 63 race sounded like when they had all these different engines coming across the starting line. Because we're young men, you and I, but I can't remember. I did not hear the Novi run in its day, and everybody talks about it. Right? Who doesn't talk about, who was there remembers what the sound of the Novi was like.
Because that's all you could hear.
And you go, and if you're me, you go, so what you're saying is it was loud. Huh. Yeah, race cars are loud. That's interesting. Great story, Dad. But now when you have it in context, you're looking at it with the Novi with the hood off, and you can hear it. That changes things. And that's where the car is still great. But how do we put it in perspective? How do we tell its story? Why is it great? What was the impact that it made? And that's kind of what our mission is, and we're working to do that. As I said, we're young men, but I'm a grown man, and I do not know what bore and stroke why that matters. I don't. Tell me why it matters. There's two engine manufacturers. You're sponsored by Honda, right? Is a 1-0 baseball game a good game? Some people argue shutout, how many, no hitter. There's lots of things to look for versus a casual fan who goes, I want to see the game end 11-10 because I know hit the ball, move around, run. But when you understand why these things are important, a supercharger or a turbocharger, or why these little things, a magneto, why they matter, and you pay more attention to it, then you've got some skin in the game. And and you're looking at different things, and why do they go just in circles? They don't. When you tell that story, and I think that's the opportunity we have, and I think this exhibit starts us down that path to do more of it.
Do you have a Novi?
We've got the Novi. We've got the Novi. So what we've done is we've got 9 engines on stands. And we've had Donald write a paragraph of, before when you would go, there'd be a sign this big, and it would tell you the years that it ran and the name of it, and that was it. It's the little white card. And now there's a 4-sided board that goes all the way around it, and it has the engine type, displacement, valve train, cylinder head, bore stroke, induction, carburation, horsepower, ignition. So it's got all the stats on it, and then it's got Donald's written a paragraph on why it's important, and then on the other side there's a photograph of it with lines that says this is the magneto, so it points to it. So then when you go see another one, you can compare where it's located and talk about the builders. We've got some bios on Harry Miller and Leo Goosen and the Chevrolet brothers. The engines include a 20 Monroe, a Fronty Ford, Miller, Briscoe, Offenhauser, the 4-cam, and we've got those are all standalones, and then the Cummins diesel, the Gulf Miller and the Tucker Special, the Novi and the Lotus Turbine are all on display with the bodywork around the engines taken off. So it's pretty cool.
See, when I want to know anything about that stuff, and I got to drag Eldon with me.
Right. Look,
because he knows, and he built a lot of the parts for it, so he knows what they do and how they do it.
I wrote it down, and I got to tell you the frustration of having Donald, again, grown man, right? Donald sitting there, AJ, who's our restoration guy, who gets the Marmon Wasp running, the Maserati running, and all that stuff, and Jason Van Sickle, the assistant curator, and they're talking about the induction, the magneto, and all this stuff, and I'm going, I have no idea what you are saying or why it matters. You got to realize you guys are in the top 1% for this. And for me, you got to dumb it down to me, because once you get me to understand this, I'm already excited about IndyCar racing. I'm already excited about the history of it. But when you tell me why this 1.0 game is awesome, it's going to be great. And so that's where I think I'm really excited about having a AJ who can restore the Marmon Wasp go, we need you to put together a parts petting zoo. And the fact that he did it is awesome.
It's amazing what people can do if you ask them to do it, isn't it? You get an idea, you say, gee whiz. And he knows how to do it, and he did it.
Well, I think it's a new era for us, largely to say, what are we doing for you? And what are we doing to get more people involved? And what's our responsibility to educate, entertain, and engage, right? And that's there are some people from Duke Energy who rented our meeting space today, and they were doing a scavenger hunt, Q&A like scavenger hunt around the building today, and we were talking about the importance of STEM, or how science, technology, engineering, and math is most tangibly shown in the history of the automotive evolution, right? And I showed him the picture of Bill Simpson lighting himself on fire, and who is it? George Snyder's got the hot dog, over him. And you go, so here's this hot rodding guy from California who comes in the Midwest, and everybody's like, you hippie, and he lights himself on fire. Now, is that science? Is it technology at the time? Is it engineering? I mean, that is, lives have been saved because of that, right? And the safer barrier. So for us, that's where we need to get to. And you talk about what Scott Jasek was doing, eventually there aren't going to be that many drivers, 10 years from now that will have the depth of a Penske's career or a Foyt, the crossover amongst all the, we were looking at Alonso because he came over and he ran here, and that was great. In some of those days, those guys were running here all the time, right? So the programming that we do, the science of an IndyCar. I mean, you talk about, everybody's asking about the new body kits. So let's see them. Let's talk about the aerodynamics. Let's build a wind tunnel for kids, and and we always kind of go, stick your hand out the window on the way home like this, and then turn it like this. Which one do you think is faster? Let's do that. I mean, let's let that be the story, and let's talk about the people that make, the Pennzoil Chaparral. Let's talk about Indy and the cars and the people in a way that excites the youth and makes them really sees just how awesome the IndyCar series is.
There was a time early on when Honda was here, came here. Their engineers would be here and working on the IndyCars engines for 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it is. Then they go back to Japan, take the technology and what they learned, take it back there to put it in the street cars, and they'd send a new group in to learn and advance what they had. It was quite a smart, slick thing to do, and I've mentioned this a number of times. When I was in Uncle Sam's canoe or the Navy, there was races over there, and I was stationed in Japan for 6 years, and I got to meet Mr. Honda. I mean, we weren't good pals, but he'd see me, recognize, say hello, and that was about it. But he started out with motorcycles and figured, this is costing money. How am I going to support it? So he started building cars. That's the whole thing started with motorcycle racing, and he built cars to pay for it. And now, of course, it's going quite well. And it's interesting because when I was a kid, when we were riding down, we didn't have air conditioning. Our air conditioning was that little window, which you don't have anymore. You open, get air in, and we'd ride along with the hand out the window. And this is what an airplane feels, what it does, how it works. Didn't understand it, but got the principle of it.
Well, look at the 57 and 58 winner. The laydown. It's a gorgeous car, but going to that next step of telling more about the story and using that as a not as a prop, but using that to go a step further than what we do now, and I think will be a lot of opportunity for us, and I'm excited that we're kind of throwing the ball out there and going to chase it rather than just sitting with it in our mitt.
Now, if somebody wants to become a member, how do they do that besides call you?
IndyRacingMuseum.org. membership, click, and there you are. And you'll have opportunities to attend, like tomorrow night's event, which is a private event after hours, to see the Incredible Engines exhibit, and then also the Camaro exhibit that also opened up last week, the 50 years of setting the pace, 50th anniversary of the Camaro. We own all the actual pace cars from, I think, like 1976 and on. But got a 67 and a 69 borrowed, but the rest of the Camaros that are on display now are the ones that were actually the ones that paced the race. The one from 2016, Roger Penske's still got the license plate that says RP 500 on it. So it's part of history. And again, that's another group of people who are very passionate about the race, but are very passionate about a certain segment. The Camaro Pace Car Club is very active, and you see all the festival cars. And again, that's another opportunity where we don't always have pace cars. I don't know the last time we've had pace cars, the actual pace cars on display. Chevy's been very generous in helping us to get them, and we've got the old ones from 70s and 80s, the other manufacturers as well. So this is just another natural anniversary and a way to tie in.
Do you have the others? I can remember when I first started coming here, which was before you were born. It was a big excitement. What's going to be the pace car? That's now gone. We know what it's going to be, just which model. Do you have some of the Cadillacs and the Chrysler? Do you have any of those, or just all Camaros?
We have all those, and those are traditionally held in the basement. They've been stored in the basement because they have not typically been display. And as you well know, Don, the founders level membership includes an hour in the basement. So there are ways to get there, which is another sort of unique thing, because forever that's been, you had to know somebody to get down. You couldn't get down there. It was mythical, right?
Oh,
so the good news is there's now access to it. The other news is you have to pay for it. But at $1,000 for two people, I mean, you go to a good Colts ticket or a Pacers game, it'll cost you $350 to sit close. So for a once in a lifetime, for a gift or for someone who has it on their bucket list, $500 a person to go down, plus getting into the museum for free for a year, and the other events and the tours that Marty and Mike and Brian put on most every day that the track is available to us, are great. And their new bus that they got, thanks to the generosity of their riders.
I have to say, having been here since the 60s, I have been down twice. Once when Charlie Thompson was the ran the facility manager, whatever you call him. He took us down because he got a hold of a video. He said, "You got to come and see this." And it was a video that was shot at the track, mostly in the snake pit, but in the garage area. And went, holy Toledo!
Were you over 18 at the time that you watched it? If it was shot in the snake pit, I got to question whether the legality of that.
I didn't shoot it; it was done, and they found who did it and pulled it off the market. Strangely enough, but. So that went down there when we didn't get to tour the cars, but I have had a tour down, and I'm going to tell you, they got cars and you go, holy Toledo. And some of them, they're the only ones in existence. Yeah. So Mr. Hullman couldn't have spent a lot of time in his office. He had to be out sniffing around looking for cars. Do the Hullmans still own the cars, or are they now part of the
They're now
museum?
foundation. When the family foundation voted a decade ago to make it a public foundation, all those assets became part of the museum. And so, as we talk about it, and there is a lot of debate about whether or not we should allow access at any price down to the basement because of it.
I agree.
But the reality is, 10 years from now, the building should be twice the size. We shouldn't have a basement. The cars should be on display or move or exhibited in a way that makes their story known to the public, right? And the basement ought to be classrooms. We ought to be doing summer camps when kids are building things and doing it. So the value of the basement 10 years from now, it shouldn't exist. In my opinion, here in the off hours sitting at McGilvery's. Being able to entice people that are locally or fans to support us and have that as a benefit is great, because then we're going to invest it in some more programming, and that'll help us get to the funds we need to raise money to actually invest in a new building and technology.
Yeah, but the thing that crossed my mind when you said we want to be able to have all the cars out, well, if you've seen them once or twice, what you're doing now to me makes great sense. And rotating the cars over the years, because I'd walk in, I'd come here 2-3 times a year sometimes. I'd be here for the whole month of May when there was a whole month, and come back 2 or 3 other times and go through, and they change the display so you see different cars.
Yep.
So if you got them all there, you've seen them, come back one more time, I probably missed something.
Well, I think, one, we're never going to be able to afford a building that can house all of our cars. As idealistic as I like to be. But I think grouping them in a way, like we talked about having an international race cars exhibit. We've got Ferraris, we've got Porsches, we've got, a lot of race cars that maybe don't have an Indianapolis history that are part of Mr. Holman's collection, that are now part of the Motor Speedway Foundation Museum's collection, that don't have necessarily a place in the space that we have if we're going to have the winners that we do and the special exhibits. That backspace, we're limited to the amount of discretionary cars. So having an exhibit on those, again, appeals to a different group, right? Yeah. And so we've got Formula One cars that aren't on display. A Schumacher and a Barrichello. Should that be up there? Smokey Unic, where does that fit? The sidecar, where does that fit in, right? But if you talk about it, if you position it as part of a story, that's the way to go.
What's the address again if you want to become a member?
IndyRacingMuseum.org, or just come to the front desk and see Marty. She is incredibly kind and generous, and is one of the major benefits of membership is that she is there tirelessly at the front desk with a smile.
Yeah, I know.
We do not drug test. We don't have enough money yet to really figure out what's encouraging the happiness that exists in Marty.
When you consider she spends some of the days, because he doesn't show up all that often, with Mike Smith, you wonder, why is she smiling?
Better living through chemicals, as my mother said.
Well, the museum has changed. The thinking, people now that are there are thinking, how do we do what we want? Here's what we want to accomplish. How do we do that? And they've got a group of people now that think about it, put on displays, bring in Penske, bring in Foyt, bring in the engines, do this and that. And you took my bathtub. That thing in the middle when you first walked in was a hot tub. That's what I used to do, and it's gone. I went in with my towel and flip-flops, and I said, where the hell are you going? In the pond. It's gone. Oh, jeez.
Well, and so what that allowed us to do last month was Donald Davidson was able to sit on a stage at one end, and we could put 130 chairs, classroom or theater style, all the way back. Whereas before, we could put 40, and then you have the fountain in the car, and you can't see anything, right? Because the way it was set up is you couldn't see it. You were limited around it. So instead, we just had a sitting and standing room only through that whole center aisle that could come see him, and that helped us bring more people to the museum. And we wouldn't have been able to host an event like that in that space without removing that. And now we can put, Sam Schmidt had his fundraising gala last May there, and you're able to put tables, of 8 down because you can use that whole space. The Borg Warner Trophy, when we would have that, we couldn't hold the many people. So I guess the takeaway is, we're trying to think of and be proactive for you. Rather than protecting a private collection and keeping it in the condition we have it is, how do we make it relevant and valuable to you? What's your experience? What are we doing for you and with our stuff? And so we got a long way to go, but I'm encouraged by the efforts and the positive responses so far.
Do you have a suggestion box? People, you ask, what would you like to see? Yeah, and have them tell you.
I tell you what, we've got great hosts that are there all the time, and a lot of us walk the floor all the time, and to see where people are looking, what they're interested in. Obviously they've got a lot of knowledge. I think one of my favorite moments yesterday was, if you've been to the Ford exhibit, we still have Foyt's rookie car sitting in the old gasoline alley garage, and the front's off, and you can see the frame, and the engine is placed where it is. And I asked her where she was looking at it, and I go, do you know why it's on the left? Now, I'm assuming this is true, so if any of you correct me on this, that's all right. But the reason what I was told was it's on the left because it's heavier, the weight, and you're making left-hand turns, and now you've got the momentum and the weight working to your advantage, so it pulls it to the left because it's a race, right? So staying on the low, when you watch track and field and they go, everybody darts for the low line. So now you can see that they're thinking about how do they get a little bit of an edge. They're thinking about it even then. Oh, that makes perfect sense. If you got a little bit of weight on the left, I go away and I go see her grab two of the people that she's with and drag them over there and point to it and explain it. So that can be said with a sign, or that can be said with a hose. It's like, how do we start talking about this information, right? And if that's important, the people that are talking to the guest, finding what the points are that are gathering interest, we need to figure out how to tell that story in a way that it doesn't require necessarily, if someone's not there to tell it, that it can still be heard.
Shoot AJ explaining it.
We're going to have AJ just sit on a stool and talk.
No, you can get ABC to fly you down, and he can sit in his shop and shoot a video of him.
You remember when we talked about the snake pit and for the view for adults only? Yeah. The explanation from AJ would be, we'd have to have adult only hours.
Now, just because
that son of a bitch there broke, and the next thing you know, I was upside down.
And you're saying that about a guy who was out practicing, I think, and he called to his spotter, said, "You see that chick on the inside turn one? She's topless." I think, you're driving a car. What the hell are you doing looking at her? Well, that's what he was doing. I forget who was in here told us that. Can't remember. But anyway, again, the whole attitude, the whole thinking of the museum has changed 180, and I think it's all for the better. I think, to get to see the Penske exhibit, to get to see the streetcar exhibit that you had, to have the A.J. Foyt exhibit, like you said, people didn't realize he run in everything, and he won all the major races in the world. 24 Hours at Daytona, Le Mans, he won. He won.
He's good, wasn't he?
He wasn't bad. He wasn't bad. Just because he got out of a car when he got bumped by that Co-ngine, and he's beating on the suspension trying to get the car ready to go back on the track. Just a nice guy. But I thank you for your time. I thank you for what the people there are doing to create interest and have people want to come back, because there's something there to see now.
Well, thanks for all of your great support and always allowing us an opportunity to share some of the things that are happening, and really appreciate all that you do to kind of keep us visible, top of mind. You're pointing, yes, I have the two-sided brochure for the Camaro exhibit, very kindly presented by Bill Estes Chevrolet. I know you're Honda, but Bill was fantastic. Did you know that his dad was the president of Chevrolet when the Camaro was launched? He was sitting at the dinner table when his dad brought home a list of 3 names, and Camaro was picked. So 1967, Pete Estes was working at Chevrolet, and 67 the Camaro debuted, and 67 it was the pace car. So Bill and his family has been generous to help us pay for a lot of the things that you'll see there, and then the Incredible Engines exhibit, obviously Cummins with the 1931 diesel. That's an incredible engine, and they helped us produce that. So come see these 2 great exhibits, and new artwork in the artwork gallery as well this week. John Orphy, who's had paintings in Open Wheel, Circle Track, and Speed Age. We've got his collection on display up there now. So,
boy, it's
worth $10. Why are we only charging $10 for this?
When you get to talk to Marty's busy on the phone. She hasn't got time to answer that. She hasn't got time to be bothered with this.
So, thank you, Don.
If you don't know what's going on, you want to see what's at the museum, we got some handouts here. If there's still some left, I'll have them for next week. I want to thank you for taking the time and the job that's going on over there, and tell Betsy thanks for allowing you to show up.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Dave
Kindly.
Wilson, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. I want to remind you, next week, my first scheduled guest will be the president and CEO of SVRA. Tony Perella will be here, and we'll talk about it. In fact, he's meeting in the morning somewhere with a potential sponsor for the series, but he said he would make it here in time Tuesday. We will also have Dave Dusek, IKDD. I know Dave Dusek. I usually don't say that in public. In addition to his foundation, which the beneficiary is Riley Kids Hospital, which he'll be having. We'll be talking about that. He's also very into the Mazda Road to Indy program. And then we'll wind up the evening with a chat with the Throckmorton gang. Bill and she's already thinking, oh, this is going to be great. And at the end of the program, we're hoping to be able to put the video up so you can see 15 minutes of what they've shot 36 hours of, get an idea what it's about. And it has to do with Grant King, who was one of the guys. He came here from Canada and had some great ideas on cars and how to make them go faster and all that kind of stuff, and how he did it with very little money. But he somehow always ended up at the Speedway, not always, but later on in his career, he'd have 2 or 3 cars in the show. So it's interesting, and some of the stuff and some of the interviews you say, he didn't like him, didn't? No, he didn't. Everybody didn't like Grant, and they have that in there too, so it'll be fun to listen to. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Welcome back, Brett. Hope we're not keeping you up too late. We'll see you next week. Until then, Don K. saying thanks. See you next week.
Thanks for everything. Really.
I know you're going to do it for the swag. You're going to do it for the swag.